Chapter 13 Religion's Last Leg. Sitting among the calmness of nature, we are reminded that everything is all right. But to sit beside this wounded bull and fearful cow, I began to worry for our poor world, since I did not know if this bull, with only one good leg left, would survive the night. There were many rambunctious creatures running wild, and the earth herself was in an uproar. The holy cow was distraught, and so the oceans, wind, rain, and waves began to soar. Storms and floods came out of nowhere, and the earth herself was rattled. Wars were waged around the world while countries battled. Meanwhile, the bull that personified religion was on its last leg. Now we prayed it would survive this dark night of human history, and so we felt terrible anxiety, imagining what would happen if the spirit of all religions were gone and dead. "You've got to fight," I told the bull that personified the spirit of our world religions.
Fight? And how many times have the humans waged war in religion's name? And isn't the result always the same? There's been far too much destruction, and it seems humanity has lost sight of religion's ultimate aim,
said the bull. What is religion's ultimate aim?
To unify and unite. The purpose is not to create doctrines and dogmas for supreme and total control. Yet it seems that everywhere humanity expands, and so too, even religions can be puffed up with human ego, and so they've lost sight of the true nature of the spiritual soul. The word religion means to bind together, but in this world, the human religions make us feel separate from one another. The real purpose of religion is to worship God in community and become devoted to the supernatural wonder,
said the bull. So there is truth to all religions, and I believe the spiritual soul is at the heart of what each religion is called to remember. So since all religions value the goodness within life, then what in our spiritual nature can bring all religions together?
Religion is much like humanity. You could travel the world to appreciate or debate our differences, but at the heart of it, we have one huge similarity. We are human. We are born and we die. And what happens after is a great debate spiritually, said the bull.
And what happens after we die?
In order to answer that question, we must ask, what and who are we really? The people of Earth think they are this body, but before that, we were dust of distant stars. The Bible says Adam was created out of dust before breath was blown into his lungs. And so, our bodies are not separate from the same substance that nature is crafted from. Yet within the breath, and behind the substance of life, it is the soul that animates existence into motion, which is the spiritual nature behind all of our eyes. So in that case, the body will someday pass. But religions reveal how the soul goes on forever. Although religious traditions see the facts of spirituality different, it is in fact our spiritual nature that holds humanity and all religions together. If we could see how the basic goodness of the soul within us makes us similar, rather than the rituals and traditions that set us apart, then we would remember that all of life is precious, and this would help all religions remember there is a spark of God within everyone's heart,
said the bull. Of course, and each religion is curious about the journey of life and death. But how have we gotten so confused? Why would religions keep us separated from one another? And what is the path forward?
There is no limit to the projections or opinions placed upon the mystery of life, and so each person's beliefs are crafted in an individual reality that they alone have designed. Whether one believes in spiritual phenomenon, or if one does not believe in spirituality, either way, the believer is in the mind, and so the mind is creating an individual reality. The non-believer's opinion is in the mind also. For example, if someone says, "I do not believe that," it shows that there is consciousness of the mind that does not believe, which cannot be denied. Among believers, there are some who believe in worldly gods, wisdom deities, a trinity, a singular source of God, or a son of God. Some mistakenly perceive demons as deities and take refuge in them, and their deluded thoughts may perceive deities as demons and denounce them, and so on. Since we are all beings, with beliefs or non-beliefs, there is one absolute truth, and that is how all beings face death. And in one way or another, the suffering of life guides all of us to seek some sort of relief. Through the process of life, all beings are forced to face death. Some might believe life is meaningful, while others may believe life is meaningless. Those who are wise will not waste this short-lived human life, and while one's mind is free to choose what to do, so the debate of religion comes to the point that has been debated throughout human existence, and that debate is in reference to what is the absolute truth. Before we understand the big question, is there a real God, we should begin by examining something that both believers and non-believers can agree upon, and this is the nature of cause and effect. For instance, if you were to harm another person, then the person will recall what was done. Another example would be if you spend all of your money, then you are left with none. There is an effect to every cause, whether or not you believe there is a supernatural power. Another example could be that if you plant seeds in the spring and water them, then the effect would be you're likely to see the growth of flowers. If you crash your car into someone else's, there is still damage caused, whether or not you choose to run. Another example of cause and effect could be seen if you were to exclaim to a crowded room that you have a loaded gun. What happens next is called consequence, and so whether or not there's a God up above, we are all aware that each choice we make has some sort of effect. Then the real question of life's mystery between both believers and non-believers is, how do these effects catch up? As for a religious believer, there is a belief in judgment or a possible spot waiting in heaven. But as for the perspective of a non-believer, then we should examine the viewpoint of a nihilist. A nihilist would reject religious principles, and they would say that life is meaningless. In essence, the point of view of a nihilist or atheist life would be to live life for one's own self-interest. So maybe they want to get super rich, or maybe they only care to get famous. Then even an atheist or a nihilist would understand that depending on their choices, whether they save, how they invest, or what they do for work, all has an important consequence, whether or not life is meaningless. From a nihilistic perspective, life and the world is a sort of happenstance, and so, to them, nothing really matters. From that point of view, the world and our lives just appeared here by chance. But this contradicts the reality of cause, effect, and consequence. You see, everything is dependent on something else. And even the earliest humans knew that if you want to survive, you need to eat food, so they chose to plant, gather, or hunt. Or, if you don't drink water, you'll get dehydrated and die. And a consequence of treating others badly is the fact that someone may cry. Life is a sort of energy, and life's potential can be molded like a type of clay. The first truth that believers and non-believers can agree upon is that there are consequences to how we act, what we do, how we speak, and how we behave. Even though an atheist or nihilist doesn't believe in God, they are aware of their own self-interest. And if you were to steal money or harm an atheist or a nihilist, surely they would not say that the harmful action was meaningless. Action has meaning because of what we feel, and so the consequences of how we live our lives are very real. We can either decide that nothing matters, or we can seek to understand how the consequences of all effects within life are constantly being revealed. So what's the big deal? One question we could ask is whether living a good life matters, or why we would even bother. Even if we wonder whether life is meaningless, then why would one live a life without any honor? An interesting reflection for believers and non-believers would be to examine what belief costs. If you say that life is meaningless and are wrong, then freedom, salvation, heaven, satori, or whatever you'd like to call it, is lost, which is quite the heavy burden and cost. If you say that God isn't real and life is meaningless, and you are indeed correct, then you do not gain anything even if you're right, because even your perspective and experience, which is grounded in life, would also be meaningless. In essence, isn't it better to be an optimist and proven a fool than a pessimist and proven correct? The cost for a nihilist or atheist to realize they are wrong will cause instant regret, because by the principle of cause and effect, their actions and choices in life will determine what happens to them next. Where the cost for a believer to be wrong simply means that life isn't such a big deal. They do not lose anything except their opinion, but if they are right, they will be responsible for their life when they find out that God is real. Now another important question comes in the terms of the cost of regret. And so we should be curious about how even in our deepest mental beliefs, we are still subject to consequence, choice, and the effects. When it comes to believers, there are a variety of different kinds. We must examine the nature of such beliefs, because all beliefs are aspects or dialects within a human being's mind. When we are born, the mind is something like soft clay of pure potential, and whatever we go through or experience in our lives, this begins to shape us as it has an effect and consequence upon us. Depending on who you are and where you are born, a human child may be baptized or brought up in a religious tradition so that they can grow up knowing the identity of God, which their families are called to adorn. This could happen when a child's mind is unaware, and so they are raised to follow in the footsteps of their parents and ancestors. This is how many of us grow up in religious traditions and believe in God. From this, we are taught the key belief that our God created the world. As our beliefs grow and expand, we discover that the goal of religions help us cultivate faith by learning from scriptural lessons. Then from these teachings, we make a deeper connection to God, and some believe that the depth of this connection can be enough to get you to heaven. But let us examine the weight for our actions in this life, and so whatever we do determines a type of future or present consequence for us. The religions that believe there is an external ordering principle with a cosmic plan would appreciate that everything has a specific meaning, and so these religions and their followers could be classified as eternalists. Eternalists would then believe that the nature of God is creating aspects of life that are always being aligned, and the way a religion is formed is by shared commonalities within the mutable space of the mind. Since the eternal nature of God is endless, then God's understanding must also be infinite. And since this is the case for eternalists, it would be impossible for there to be a definite number of doctrines of religious traditions that exist. Since God was never born and has not died, since God's eternal nature goes on and on, we could appreciate that every religion has a different way to appreciate the infinite nature of God. Not to say that every religion is absolutely true and correct. The idea would be that the number of ways to understand God would be infinite. From this understanding, it would be valuable to consider all facets of different religions because they would all hold valuable insight. For instance, it would be worthwhile to consider how in the Hindu religion there is a belief that creation has three unique forces called sattva, rajas, and tamas, and the balance of these three is called the purusha, or self. Purusha is believed to be white in color, shining, round, and as small as a mustard seed in the heart of all beings. An interesting reflection comes from the Bible in Matthew chapter 17. Truly I tell you, if you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you. When one is liberated in Hinduism, the Purusha, or soul, abides in heaven. There is also the belief of a holy trinity in Hinduism: Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. These are the three qualities of God: a creator, a sustainer, and a destroyer. And the Hindus use mythical stories to describe virtue, wisdom, and lessons which express their scriptures. Vishnu is believed to have 10 manifestations, or avatars of human existence. When the Vedas, which are the 4 key scriptures of Hinduism, sank to the ocean because the time was too early for them to appear, Vishnu manifested as a giant fish to retrieve them. Holding up the universe beyond danger, Vishnu also manifested as a tortoise. Then there was a time when Vishnu manifested as a wild boar, and again as someone with the lower body of a human and the upper body of a lion to kill an evil king. Vishnu manifested as Rama, and Rama's wife Sita was abducted by the 10-headed king of Lanka. Then with the help of Hanuman, the king of monkeys, Rama was able to slay the king of Lanka. This entire story of Vishnu's incarnation was written in the Ramayana, which is a great epic to preserve the traditions and lessons. And similarly, Vishnu reincarnated as Krishna, whose story is written in the great epic called the Mahabharata. It is said that the 9th manifestation of Vishnu was the Buddha, the awakened one who went on to create Buddhism. Finally, Hindus believe that Vishnu will manifest to subdue evil beings. These accounts as a preserver could be viewed as the Supreme Spirit coming into form from the formless God. And by entering form, the Spirit helps relieve the suffering of our world. Just as Krishna is here to preserve the goodness of our world, there is the opposite side of the Hindu Trinity, which is called Shiva. Shiva appears to liberate all beings out of divine compassion, which could appear as destruction. Shiva could be thought of as a mystical being, and comes into form through the taming of the ego named Rudra. It is thought that Jesus Christ could be an incarnation of Vishnu or Shiva, depending on your beliefs and views. Followers of the sect of Jain believe there is a result from each action of virtue and non-virtue, and that liberation or freedom from suffering will never occur until all karma, which is cause and effect, has been accumulated and is completely exhausted. In order to exhaust this result of karma, They are diligent in upholding their own tradition of strict discipline and ascetic practices. Whereas almost all nihilists believe that the followers of all other views have wrongly perceived the obvious reality of phenomena, they consider all views that do not agree with their own to be misinterpretations and only fabrications, and are therefore opposed to them. Those who follow the tradition of Judaism know that their Bible prophesies that the Messiah will come in the future and will be the king of the 12 tribes of Israel. In Judaism, there is a belief that the Jews have been chosen by God for a purpose. Sometimes, this belief is misinterpreted as the Jewish people being the only chosen people, but rather, the Jewish people have a specific mission: to be a light unto the nations, and to exemplify the covenant with God as described in the Torah. Isaiah and Jeremiah view God's connection to Israel as a means to teaching monotheism, combating idolatry, curbing human arrogance, ending violence, lust, greed, extreme chauvinism and warfare, and ushering in a new society. While the concept of chosenness may be understood or misunderstood, it represents a connection to God. And so, we must understand that God has entered into a covenant with all of humankind, that Jews and non-Jews alike have a relationship with God. When it comes to labeling a name for the divine, Judaism isn't so concerned for the ultimate label of God. Rather, they view this creative source as omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient, and eternal, which cannot be limited. And so this mirrors the truest self as spoken about in the Kena Upanishad. And so the Kena Upanishad states, "Who makes my mind think? Who fills my body with vitality? Who causes my tongue to speak? Who is that invisible one who sees through my eyes and hears through my ears? The self is the ear of the ear, the eye of the eye, the mind of the mind, the word of the words, and the life of life. Rising above the senses and the mind, and renouncing separate existence, the wise realize the deathless self. Him our eyes cannot see, nor words express. He cannot be grasped, even by the mind. We do not know, we cannot understand, because he is different from the known, and he is different from the unknown. Thus we have heard from the illuminated ones. That which makes the tongue speak, but cannot be spoken by the tongue, know that as the self. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the mind think, but cannot be thought by the mind, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the eye see, but cannot be seen by the eye, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes the ear hear, but cannot be heard by the ear, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. That which makes you draw breath, but cannot be drawn by your breath, that is the self indeed. This self is not someone other than you. If you think, I know the self, you know not. All you can see is its external form. Continue therefore your meditation. Those who follow the religion of Islam say that Jesus is a messenger of Allah, which is the Arabic name for God, who created the world. Jesus is not believed to have been crucified, but instead to have ascended into the realm of the Creator. In the Islamic tradition, it is said that there will be a Savior in the future, and that Jesus will come to support him and to annihilate the false Messiah. In their tradition, they follow in the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad. Those who follow Christianity believe that Jesus is the Son or manifestation of God as the Creator, and He was crucified. In the future, they believe that Jesus comes for a second time. Those who follow the Buddha are called Buddhists, and Buddha was not regarded as God. The Buddha was a person who awakened to the dream of existence. He found a way to transcend suffering, and as he found a method, he wanted to share this wisdom with others to transcend suffering. There is no belief that Buddha will save the Buddhists. Rather, the Buddha gives us a map so that each of us can save our own self from the forest of suffering. The Buddha does not walk this path for you, but rather, he teaches us how to walk it. For instance, if you want to go to Italy, or California, or Argentina, I cannot go for you, but rather, I can go for myself and tell you all about the route to get there. The Buddhist teachings are all maps that get us out of confusion. And these maps and teachings are not a religion, but rather, Buddhism is a discussion. If something in Buddhist teachings is proven wrong, whether it be scientifically or experimentally, then the Buddhists make sure their teachings reflect the true nature of reality. Buddhists believe that within the essence of all beings, all plants, all people, all creatures, and all living things is the source of basic goodness. Buddhists, like Hindus, believe our souls have been reincarnating over and over on the earth to heal the effects of all our choices, which could be called our karma. Life is then a path of healing this heaviness, and it is our duty, and so they know this as Dharma,
said the bull who was named Dharma. So I must know, with all these religions and beliefs, what is true? And what's with all the pain and suffering in our world? Tell me, O Spirit of all religions, how can we heal you? But before you tell me, I must tell you the truth about myself. I bow before you to admit I have my own hidden faults. I think of myself as a Dharma practitioner, but I have done all that is against the Dharma. I have committed sins and faults, being well aware of the causes and effects of karma. O sublime teacher, you who know, please swiftly look upon me with compassion. Bless me to pacify my pride and selfishness.
You who see that suffering exists, knows that the nature of cause and effect reveals how all suffering has a root. But do not be dismayed, for even an apple tree undergoes hardship on its way to produce pure fruit. What you have undergone is a process for spiritual growth. Do not weep for the hardships of the world, but know we are walking each other home. Although I myself cry from time to time, I look forward to when the world religions are whole, the day when it is not one religion that is more special than the others, but rather I live for the day when all religions value the life and essence of all of our souls. Now all I can do is open up to tell you my truth. Then God gives you free will to choose whatever you are called to do. I am most saddened by our world's lack of unity. So many are searching far off for something else, be it the powers of a priest, freedom, or a safe haven after this life. The ideas they are seeking are rarely turned inward to examine their own spiritual nature, called the soul of the self. The reason this must be addressed is because our far-off beliefs can have quite the cost upon us. It's like one religion saying, "We know the only way to God, so you can only follow us." And so crusades have conquered, wars have been waged, and all sorts of terrible crimes and atrocities have been committed in religion's name, all because of one extreme belief or claim. But why can't we be content with what we have and where we are. Rather, the ego has infiltrated the people, and so the state of the current world is the consequence that humanity has to pay for. I once heard a priest claim that premarital sex was immoral, and yet I wonder where humanity began. Somewhere long before religion started. The only hope for our soul to evolve and grow started with sex from an unmarried woman and man. What a priest may misunderstand is that a religious tradition, such as Christianity or Catholicism, should be seen as a pillar of morality and virtue, and so nature will always trump any human religion, because God created nature and man created religion. So we should live in union with nature's rules. Premarital sex is not immoral, but yet, marital sex is far more intentional. If we teach the youth the value of cultivating genuine intention and meaningful relationships, then the world could understand that the leaders of all religions should be examples of that which is esteemed as exceptional. It is an exceptional life to wait until marriage to have sex. It is an exceptional life to choose love and peace. It is an exceptional life to be devoted to God and become a priest. But to deny humanity the natural creation of sex and claim it's immoral before marriage seems to be ignorant to our basic human needs. If humanity does not reproduce, then there will be no teachings left. Religions may claim what is moral and immoral, but in truth, our teachers, monks, sages, and priests are living examples to humanity of what it looks like when we are devoted to God as we seek to become our very best. Everyone is capable of being so good, but not everyone in school gets an A on every test. Religions seem to choose what is right from wrong, and by doing this, the world has become oppressed. In truth, religions are not our moral police, but rather they are pillars of virtue, compassion, and faith. We should not follow out of fear, but rather we should look to them as the living wisdom and examples of how our spiritual nature can lead us to our highest fate. It's gone too far to believe one religion is absolutely correct, for this is a belief in the mental mind. What then happens is that this belief perpetuates an individual's ego out of proportion, and so their belief may end up blind. If a Christian is told that Christ is the only way to God, a Christian might look at the practices of an Islamic follower and feel rage. And so it's happened that an atheist or disturbed religious follower has gone to a mosque, church, synagogue, or temple and treated a sacred space no different from a gun range. With such terrible action comes some form of reaction, and once a violent act is done to one religion, soon comes a counteraction. That is how religion lost one of its legs. It's how I began to stumble. The people of Earth believed that their individual religion was the only way to God, and by this, their ego was far from humble. Instead of treating others with love, religious followers began to judge, and in time, many prophets, saints, and angels were sent down in human form to help, but time and time again, the ego of religious followers wouldn't budge. As Christ set out to do, he came to create one united church. He did not want to draw lines and exclude others, and it is so sad to know that the ignorant nature of humanity seems to have misunderstood the true nature of his oral words. Rather than include all religions and traditions in one space, after his death, the church built walls around a new Christian steeple, and so it was a sign that this is where the Christians went to pray. It's not just Christians, but Jewish, Hindu, Buddhist, Islamic, and all religions have separated others too. That's how religion lost its second leg. Instead of religions bringing people together, the church has separated others by claiming only they knew the truth. One religion would look at people who wore turbans, then compare them to the people who carried rosaries. Whether intentional or not, religions and followers became interested in the layers that covered the soul, rather than the actual soul that was underneath. For we are all of one soul. We are all children of God. But as religions separated us into different categories, after enough time, even some of the priests and teachers forgot how the essence of love is the basis of all scriptural stories. What would it feel like if any religious group could find refuge in any other religious temple, cathedral, or mosque? Then we would be living the wisdom of the saints and the prophets. From this, we would be breaking down the barriers where we were once lost. What would it feel like to invite other wisdom traditions into our home? What would it feel like to listen to teachings from the many paths of God? Surely, we would make new friends and see that we have no real enemies. That way, all religions would be united with a loving and peaceful bond,
said the bull. Now the holy cow began to cry, and so tears filled the sky. Rain poured down, and I began to pray to God that the bull with one leg would survive this dark night. Falling upon my knees, I prayed before the bull. How can I save you? What must we do?
Listen to all religions, then spread what you have come to learn. Because if humanity doesn't heal its world religions, then no one will be left to protect the earth, and so the world will burn,
said the bull. Then I must know the truth. How did the world religions lose its third leg? And so the bull with one good leg said,
In every religion, there is a connection to God through the means of spirit. Some call this a soul, others call it our true nature or consciousness. But within all beings, all things, all plants, and all creatures, there is a thread of God's creation, and so we must know that it's impossible for any of us to be separate from it. Religions praise an external God and destroy a visible nature. Humanity has nearly abandoned this holy earth, and from their actions, the people of earth have practically forsaken her. Religion lost its third leg when it lost sight of the true nature of our soul. Instead of looking inward to see what makes us similar, religions taught us to crave an external heaven after we're gone from life. But this life is what makes all of us whole. We have come to this planet for a good reason, and yet some religions teach us we are made of sin. The real miracle of life is not that God is coming to save you. The truth is that God lives within. Religion is standing on its last leg because it cannot quite grasp how the true nature of our supreme soul is invisible and invincible. The true nature of our soul is within our bodies and minds, as it lives within all of our hearts, which means that all life everywhere is a divine miracle. What if you walked outside and contemplated how God's creation is within each and every tree? Wouldn't this change the way you treat nature? Wouldn't it change the way you see all of reality? Suddenly, we could no longer destroy forests and natural life, and we would learn to live in union with nature. We could coexist with God's creation and all religions, and this would allow us to live in union with our Creator. This is the purpose of religion, to help us create a divine link back to God. Religion lost 3 of its legs because of ego, because of separation, and because the kingdom of God is within the spirit of all things, and that is the truth we have all forgotten,
said the bull.